the Nile. The Nile is a river, and it is in Africa. And it goes from Central Africa up north to the Mediterranean Sea. And it is the longest river in the world, 6,648 kilometers, 150 kilometers longer than the Amazon in South America. It is draining a tenth of Africa. And it doesn't have the hugest drainage basin of the world, but the longest. Bigger are the ones of the Amazon, for example, or the Zaire in Southern Africa. Now, what is going on there? This long river, the longest one of the earth. It starts at the Kagera River in Burundi. And then it goes through Tanzania and Rwanda into the Lake Victoria. And the Lake Victoria is big. It lies on the equator. It is big, but shallow. And it goes then out in Uganda at Jinja, at Victoria. It goes out and is 400 meters wide where the Nile proper starts. I think at that place it's still called the Mountain Nil. And then it goes on into the Sudanese plain. And there is the Sud. And that is a swampy area. And then it's also sort of many meanders and grasses and reed also when floating on the surface and blocking the river in some places. And then there comes, at Lake Nimule, comes the Bahr el Ghazal, a river from the southwest, and from there on it is the White Nil. There, a bit north of the Lake Victoria, there's also the Maputo Sese Seko Lake, and joined through the Sembliki River, the Lake Edward. And these are the two main sources of the White Nil. Now it goes from Lake No, it goes on and on and on, and then it is joined at Khartoum with the Blue Nile, and that is a very important river. It comes from the Ethiopian highlands at 1,800 meters high at Lake Tata, and there's also a second river, the Atbara, also coming there in, joining them a little north of at Khartoum. And there is monsoon, summer monsoon, June, July, September, and also in these months the melting of the ices, of the snow in the Ethiopian highlands, and then comes 2/3 of the water of the whole Nile from the Blue Nile, and not where it comes further down from Africa. It's still far down in Africa, depending on where one is looking, from so far. Now, and then it goes on and then comes to the Nubian desert, and there it makes an S shape, that way around, I think. 30,000 kilometers does it go through the Nubian desert, and there is the floodplain just narrow. There's not so much cultivation possible. And then it goes on and on and on, 3,000 kilometers up, and then it reaches Aswan, which is already in Egypt, in southern Egypt. And there was started to be built in 1960, the Aswan High Dam. A big dam, 111 meters high and 3.2 kilometers wide, and behind it is the Lake Nassau. 480 kilometers long is Lake Nassau, and it is the largest human-made lake in the world. It goes up until Sudan. Now, then it goes on through the Nile Valley, and there's more cultivation possible. 15 kilometers wide is the floodplain there, and it goes on and reaches then Cairo, and there at Cairo it is then fanning out, becoming the Nile Delta, 160 kilometers north and 240 kilometers wide, and goes then into the Mediterranean Sea. And it had in ancient times 7 main outcoming points, 7 streams. Now it has 2 main ones, Rosetta and Damietta. So there it goes on. So there is also then irrigation done with the Nile. Basin irrigation is there done. They let the water run in already in ancient times, and then they close it off with earth dams, waiting 2 months until the sun has evaporated the water, and then they're planting in the reddish gray fertile silt new plants, new crops. The problem with it is that it is just once a year possible when there's a big Nile flood. So they started to build many dams. So like the Aswan High Dam, there's also hydroelectric dam, so that they can make irrigation all the year around. There was a bit speculating around where the Nile comes from. I think also where between Aswan and further down Khartoum there are 6 cataracts or rapids. One of them is now underwater through the Aswan High Dam. And the navigation is not possible so good with ships. maybe partly because of that reason. There was a lot of speculation where comes the Nile from. Ptolemy lived in the 2nd century, so already 2000 years after the ancient Egypt, where the Nile goes along at Luxor, Kafar, Thebes, Memphis, Giza. He in the 2nd century wasn't thinking it comes from the twin lakes, fed through the mountains of the moon. There was then John Henning Speck, who discovered in 1858 the Lake Victoria, and also Samuel Baker and H.M. something. They then found then other lakes there, the Mabuzo Sese Seko, then named Lake Albert and Lake Albert, and that puzzles then another idea together that it comes the White Nil from these lakes there. Lake Victoria through the Semliki River joined the Mabuzo Sese Seko in the Albert Lake. Whereas the White Nil, the Blue Nil, comes there from Ethiopia. And that all is according to Leonard Greggson's Wonders of the World book on the pages 28, 29 and 30, where it's also written that through the building of the Aswan High Dam, some archaeological sites like Abu Simbel were underwater, where the temples of Ramses II, rock cut into mountain were flooded, which they would have been if they would not have moved away. So the ones of Ramses II, rock cut temple, were moved away to other places. Now, all according to that book, written in a year, I think 1989, the position that views expressed are the ones of a source and don't necessarily line with my own or with ones of entities problem.